Afternoon, Carlos.
Afternoon.
Thank you very much for inviting us in to talk about what looks like a very big program of change in digital transformation. But it'd be quite interesting just to go back into your career, because there seems to be a progression there which would be quite interesting to follow up. And obviously starting off in Catalonia at the Polytechnic University. Do you feel that's given you the grounding for what's happened since?
Yeah, well, Barcelona is my hometown, so I'm Catalan, but I've spent many years in different countries. I've spent a couple of years living in France, so I can barely speak French, but still, and I had the opportunity to do my studies in the States as well, in the US.
I saw that. That was really interesting. Yeah, and two of the best schools.
Yeah, MIT and Stanford. Lovely times.
Each side of the States.
Yeah, both coasts.
Yeah.
Both coasts. I particularly like the Californian flow, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a fantastic time, the one I had in the States. I'm very happy with my career. And what I can recommend to people who is potentially interested in the technology career is to travel around and know people in different countries. Because that brings you this this ability to understand different people and different cultures. And in technology, this is all about people. And people get easily confused by the technology-driven innovation. But what really makes innovation effective is people. And there's only one way to get value out of technology, and is by having the right people on board.
What would you say was the difference between the two schools and the two?
Well, MIT is a fantastic place.
Sloan, isn't it?
Sloan Business School. I really enjoyed my time in Sloan Business School, but MIT in general is the epicentrum of science, I must say. And Stanford is more the epicentrum of business or venture capitalism, or startups, or this phenomenal Bali process during the last 25 years. So both schools are interesting schools, and I definitely recommend both schools. It's not that I can say, well, I prefer this one or this other one. They help you to look at our world with two different lenses. Both lenses are necessary lenses. So MIT is more focused on the science, the process, the technology, and Stanford gives you a bit more sense of, well, that's all fine, but we need to make money. And they teach you about not just making money, but making the world a better place to live, which is really cool. I mean, it's nothing that European schools tend to teach you.
Not even INSEAD.
No, not even INSEAD. Well, I've spent half a year in INSEAD, but yeah, it's too much European, to be honest.
So you think we Europeans are suffering a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of...
Yeah. Well, nothing
get
that...
up and go.
I mean, it's not that we cannot catch up, but we need to make significant changes in the way we teach people, about what has to be the right attitude in facing risks.
I was going to ask you the question about Brexit a bit later on, but I think probably now is the right time.
Sure.
So what's your view in terms of what impact is that going to have on, for instance, the bank and on the way you actually move things along with TSB?
Yeah, well, TSB is a British challenger bank, so our business is here in the UK, and we will continue to deliver, or at least to challenge other British banks, and making banking a better experience for British consumers. So this is not going to change, and the main mission hasn't changed. And this is not changing neither from a group perspective, because for Sabadell, TSB is it's a British operation. So all of our concerns from a group perspective are more related to the evolution of the British economy and how this could be affected by Brexit. But it's not that different from, I mean, the main concerns for some other banks in the UK.
So from the point of view of IT systems, etc., no particular issues?
To be honest, I will confess that when we started this large transformation program, the decisions we've made from a design point of view were compatible with both the scenarios, just because we were not...
Oh, right. So you'd taken that into account in the planning.
It was part of the design. I mean, it wasn't one of the scenarios. And actually, our new target platform will run in UK data centers. So from that perspective, well, nobody knows exactly what's going to be the outcome of the Brexit agreement, but just in case, we feel that we are in a safe place.
And there seems to be quite an interesting Spanish connection, shall I say? It's almost a Spanish business strategy, because not only Bank Sabadell, but when one looks at the strategy of Santander, and dare I say it, Zara, and the competitive edge, for instance, that they're getting through this, I suppose, rationalization of the systems and focusing on the need to have what are really efficient and effective systems for the particular business that they're in. Zara, for instance, it's obviously from the design through the supply chain to the customer, and that customer focus, which obviously you have, and it looks like Santander has as well, but it's putting in that consistency of the digital platform. A lot of companies think about it, and they don't manage. So how do you think that you've been able to accomplish that and do all these acquisitions and obviously use this as a platform for acquisition? It's a very interesting strategy.
Yes, it is. Well, I cannot tell you much about Zara, but
my wife told me all about it.
Yeah, sure. But in terms of the Spanish banks, we share, let's say, some similar approaches, particularly when we talk about IT platforms.
Yes.
For many different reasons, and some of those reasons are connected with our history in Spain, we ended up having IT platforms, and this is a relevant difference between Spain, the UK, or even the US, because the IT platforms, the core banking platforms, are homemade solutions.
Yeah.
So, and as well for different reasons that probably will take hours to explain in detail, but the Spanish banks, or at least the leading Spanish banks, in the last 20, 25 years, they've spent a huge amount of money on IT. As a result of that, both Santander, BBVA, or Bank Sabadell, we have, in comparison with some other European players, we have modern IT solutions, modern IT products.
It's modern, but it's also, as a fellow CIO, I mean, what we always used to talk about was the need for standardization, for simplification, for sharing, etc., and focus on data. And for some reason, that seems to have got through to the governance in the Spanish banks, which it hasn't done in other areas, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what comes across anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our IT platforms in general, and this is particularly true in Sabadell, but our IT platforms are heavily integrated. So we don't have 80 different platforms to run the business.
Sure.
We have mainly a core banking that is fully integrated, single source of truth, single customer database.
Now that's really important, isn't it?
It is.
Because you look at the banks here, and they they seem to have had big difficulties in getting that single view of the customer, which obviously has a big impact on customer relationships.
And you know what, that's even more important when you are facing a digital revolution than the one we're facing, all of us.
Yeah.
Because in the digital revolution, I mean, the customer, the new digital customer will not accept anymore the traditional banking experience.
Sure.
Where, you know, I'm not getting a quick answer. So the digital revolution is all about people who is not patient anymore. I mean, I have a daughter. My daughter she's 18 years old, and you know what? And I like to observe how she behaves using apps and mobile apps and things like that. So they can download a new app. They open the new app. If it takes more than 5 seconds to get the app up and running, they just delete the app. They're not patient. So the digital customers are, in general, people with no patience.
It's got to work. Yeah.
So you know, if you are changing your customer details with your bank, what you expect as a digital customer is this change is effective immediately. So if you go to your branch, you expect your changes having been applied on the system. So that different behavior of the digital customers cannot be delivered without a fully integrated view of the customer.
Sure.
With real-time systems.
Sure.
I mean, the batch concept, which is quite popular in banking industry, is unacceptable in a digital era. So what does it mean? That I have to wait till your systems, your crappy systems, run something overnight so I can get my problem sorted out?
Sure. So what do you think has given these Spanish companies that strategy, that strategic view, that vision, and obviously now the ability to have that competitive edge?
Yeah, well...
Is it in the national psyche?
Now, to be honest, there are some funny explanations for that, and probably this is not a very orthodox view, but let me share with you my view on that. So, for political reasons, Spanish banks in the early in the 20th century, I'm talking about 1940, 1945, 1946, after the Civil War. For political reasons, the Spanish banks were constrained, were limited to specific regions.
Right.
So they were not allowed to open branches all over the country. And that has created a competitive environment where the only one way to differentiate yourselves from your competitors was investing in technology, because you were not allowed to invest in more branches, which was the normal growth vector for all of the European banks at that moment in time. So it's a combination of political constraints that at the time were a limitation, and the fact that the Spanish banks, when the democracy arrived to Spain and liberated banks from this constrained activity, the most effective way to compete was investing in technology. So the peak investment arrived in the 70s. And in the 70s, I know the 70s, it's, especially for young people, it's like, ages. But in the 70s, and you probably remind that. But in the 70s was the explosion of PCs, Windows systems, client-server revolution, late 70s, early 80s.
More in the 80s, I think.
Yeah, more in the early 80s. But it was this kind of revolution where, the computing capacity was more popularized. And at the early 80s, all the Spanish banks, they invested in client-server systems, modern branches, mainframes, and most of them, they made significant efforts in order to build solutions that will allow them to compete against each other.
So definitely, I mean, the IT systems do seem to have had a big impact
Absolutely.
on the competitive nature and the competitive advantage.
And you know, real-time systems arrived to the Spanish banks earlier than in other places in Europe.
Right.
And that, you know, this is an example of technology changing mindsets, because banking in Spain has been real-time since, I don't know, since early 80s.
Really?
And in some other countries, this banking with my specific branch had remained for decades.
And the ability to be able to acquire other organizations.
That's a funny story as well. You know, before my arrival into Sabadell Group, Sabadell was a regional bank.
Yes.
You know, small bank, 300 branches. 300 branches all around the country, but mostly in Catalonia. The bank at that moment in time was using mainframe technology, Honeywell Bull technology.
Oh yes, remember that.
You know, good one, I must say, but not the standard technology for banking, which is more on the IBM side.
Yeah, sure.
So at that moment in time, the bank, it was a very clever decision. They decided, well, it works well, the technology is not a problem for us, but we need to move into a technology that is widely used, so we can find people, we can find resources, engineers, etc. So the bank started a very complex transformation process to move into a new technology. And by doing that, and it was as well a conscious decision, we decided, well, not me, because I was not part of the bank, but the bank decided that all the interfaces, all the APIs, to move data from the former system into the new system were valuable assets. So our Sabadell platform, which is the same platform that we will deploy here in the UK, we are working to deploy this in the UK as well. As part of the genetics of the platform, we have all the interfaces to upload data from acquired banks into the system. So it's not that each time we acquire a new company, we have to develop new processes to transform data and upload data into the platform. Is that the platform itself, it has this ability by design.
That's quite powerful, isn't it?
Well, it saves a lot of time and money each time you are acquiring another one bank.
Well, when you look at some of the competitor banks, that's exactly where they've had big problems, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was quite forward thinking. And where do you think that thing was? That right at the top of the bank, that the vision was there?
Yeah. Well, the top management at that time was absolutely confident that, well, the bank, in order to achieve the position they wanted in the Spanish market, the bank should combine organic and inorganic growth. So that was part of the atmosphere. There are more acquisitions to come in the next coming years. And then it was also a view from the IT department that, well, this is hard work. I mean, what's the point about, you know, not protecting this hard work? And so, yeah, this decision has made during this large transformation program. But then we invested into protecting this asset over years, and we perfected the asset because, you know, in my case, this is my integration process number 13. So, and I'm not.
So 13.
13. I'm not the oldest one. So there are some other people in our Sabadell Group.
I saw that there were 7 acquisitions that you did, but that was between 2008 and 2014.
Yeah.
So presumably that was prior to that.
Prior to that, yeah. And well, some of them are small acquisitions, to be honest. Not all of them same size. We acquired a couple of banks in the US as well.
I saw that. Now, presumably the platform was resilient enough and adaptive enough to be able to bring on international strategy at
Yeah, well,
the time.
in some of our acquisitions in the US, we deployed tactical solutions because the business was not big enough to deploy the entire strategic solution. But yeah, the platform has proven through many different processes to be flexible enough to cope with the significant difficulties of integrating another one bank into the business. But to be honest, the most challenging one is the one we are doing right now.
The TSB?
The TSB one.
Why is that?
Well, because, you know, when you are migrating from a Spanish bank into a Spanish bank, despite the fact that you face lots of difficulties, you don't have significant differences in terms of regulation, compliance, data structures. But here in the UK, we have very special payment schemes. Facet payments is a British thing, and it's not comparable to anyone else, to anyone else's payment schemes. Chaps and bucks, they're very British payment schemes. And I'm not complaining. I mean, and they are actually working quite well. But it requires a lot of, you know, effort into flexing the solution to cope with specific issues in our local operation.
And when you talk about the platform, I mean, does that go right through from the IT and communications infrastructure right through the back office, into the front office, into the CRM, into
yeah, absolutely.
the whole lot?
We are changing every piece of technology in this bank.
Wow, that's quite
we're changing everything. Well, in general, and it is not my intention to bore you or to bore the audience, but in general, our technology platform, which is called Protea, is a combination of, let's say, 3 main design decisions. So our general ledger, our accounting, is based on a mainframe. Then we have a mid-range or a middleware layer that hides all the complexity of our back-end systems. So all of our back-end systems, the accounting systems, but as well the human resources or the marketing systems, or all of our back-end systems are wrapped by this mid-range layer that allows our front-end applications to execute whatever transaction they need, despite this transaction is offered by a specific back-end systems. Because this middleware is a SOA solution, it's a service-oriented architecture. So all of our transactions are real-time and are available through a web service.
Right.
So the transaction is exactly the same, despite this transaction is invoked by our mobile app, or by the branch teller application, or by the ATM. And that's part of the, you know, it's a very important ingredient of the secret sauce. Because, you know,
so it gives you that adaptability,
absolutely,
which is especially important in the mobile digital area.
Absolutely,
now.
absolutely. And one of the outcomes we expect from this large migration program here at TSB is, after migration, or once migration is completed, we are fully committed to deliver an outstanding digital experience to our customers, and this is one of the main benefits of migration. And as Paul Pester uses to say, at least internally, one of the advantages of this new platform is, once we complete migration, we will transform this bank in a digital company that happens to be a bank. So, and yeah, this is a combination of technology that enables that kind of change, and having the right attitude and the right mindset. So it's coming back to my, my point of how important is people in transformation.
Right.
So we have the right people here at TSB, and we will have the right technology by year end. So that unleashes the power of this bank to become a real challenger.
And you have increased the digital people in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is not just a technology migration. We're changing our org chart, our organizational structure. We're attracting talented people from fintech and from different companies. Because completing migration is just the beginning. I mean, the real fun will come after migration. Because
so building after that.
Yeah, because it's when we will have the ability to, launch new amazing products into this market, and hopefully surprise our customers.
You said Europe, in a way, is perhaps not as advanced or has issues compared to the States. But actually, I wonder, I mean, do you see GDPR, for instance, as an opportunity or a threat?
Because definitely an opportunity.
I would have thought, given the work that you've put in and the consistency that you have and the focus that you've had on the CRM side, that must give you an
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, GDPR is, well, first of all, by having this customer-centric or customer data-centric architecture,
sure.
GDPR poses less difficulties into...
You know where your customer data is.
Yeah, we know where the customer data is, and we know exactly when and why is this customer data used for. One of the main requirements of GDPR is you have to tell your customers why are you gathering information.
Absolutely. And
what's the purpose of gathering this information. So we know that. So it's not a big challenge to be GDPR compliant for us. It's not going to be once we complete migration, for sure.
Sure, sure.
But on top of that, I'm very supportive with GDPR. I think this is one of the main challenges of digital revolution. So we need to give the people the right to be in control of their personal information.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's particularly important in banking, but not only in banking, I must say. I mean, I don't know if you had ever take time to read T's and C's from Google or from Facebook.
Oh, every day.
Which I don't recommend. It's quite boring. It's quite boring, but GDPR will affect those over the top, very heavily.
And also the social media programs as well, I think, because obviously that's bread and butter to them. And things like identity management, I mean, and security, that is something which...
Yeah, it's, as I said before, and obviously I cannot disagree with my boss, we will transform this bank in a digital company that happens to be a bank. But if I elaborate a bit more, a digital company in banking means as well a security company.
Sure.
So because one of the main goals or the main objectives for a CIO, CISO security team in banking is protecting our customers' accounts.
Sure.
And by being more and more digital friendly, we will face new threats. And it is our obligation to protect our customers against that.
Absolutely.
And the old way of doing things, which is creating difficult experiences for our customers, like forcing our customers to remember long passwords or to remember memorable phrase or things like that, is not what they expect from us. So they expect from us a bit more and a smarter approach. So let me just...
So the new mobile app, for instance, that you've got...
that new mobile app that we recently published into Google Play and the Apple stores, it uses the fingerprint reader, the modern smartphones. That's pretty convenient. I mean, you don't have to remember anything. Just put your thumb into your phone and you are straight in. And that's a good example of how to implement security solutions that are at the same time convenient and secure. And this is the right path. So we'll combine this with new solutions. And I cannot comment much on that, but probably the next few months, let's say 2 or 3 months, we will make an announcement about using iris recognition as well. And we're working as well in some emerging technologies that use biometrics techniques in order to deliver security. I mean, the best security is the invisible security. It's the security that doesn't force our users to do anything special. So just the way you touch your touchscreen and the angle of your finger and the pressure of your finger using your smartphone. This is also a biometric pattern.
Sure. And you're working with other companies on obviously this technology. Are they here in the UK? Are they in Spain? Or
they are all over.
All over?
They are all over.
Right.
But yeah, we are also particularly interested into cooperating with the fintech companies here in London. Because London is a very important hub for fintech companies.
Sure.
And this is definitely one of the areas where we want to develop good relationships with them. And we being a challenger bank, we are less concerned about competition. So,
but the other ones are more concerned.
The other ones are more concerned.
Your competitors are going to be more concerned. I can see that. Yeah. So security in general, what makes you lose sleep, or your board lose sleep?
Well, you know, I'm confident and I'm happy with all the efforts we're doing in security. So no one is in a completely safe place when we are talking about big global threats. But we are now that we are served by Lloyds, we are in a relatively safe position. But our new platform will combine state-of-art technologies in security, some biometrics, as I mentioned before. If the question is, what's the main concern? Well, the main concern is I'm not worried about losing data or losing customer data. The main concern
that's well protected.
That's well protected. So, we are in the leading edge in that particular space. The problem is the nonsense attacks. So the attacks that are coming from people, that they only have the intention to create problems. So
right. So not economic or
not economic. Just the denial of service, the DDoS attacks. These kind of attacks that are heavily distributed. So are normally coming from hundreds, if not thousands, of devices all over the country. That creates a lot of disruption. So yeah, we have lots of mitigation plans for that.
So Internet of Things, for instance, that's going to...
Internet of Things will create new threats, for sure.
It'll certainly increase the number of opportunities.
And you know what? There are people like Gartner or Boston Consulting Group that they predict that in the next 5 years, the total number of IP devices will grow by 1,000 per 100. So 10 times more devices in 5 years. So
yeah,
that's a completely different scenario.
And the security arrangements on those are not necessarily that good at the moment.
No, well, it's not just the banking industry who has to invest in security. That's as well one of the main concerns of the self-driven cars or the intelligent homes, smart homes. I'm sure that the bad guys, the fraudsters, will find out ways to leverage on smart systems.
What's interesting is to see the business model of the bad guys.
They're
well connected and they have good economic models.
They are very creative people.
Absolutely, yeah. And more than we are. I mean, changing nature of the risks and the threats and the sort of the changing nature of the attackers, if you like. Are you seeing any of that? Are you seeing the
Yeah, as I mentioned before, there are more and more people, and this is probably not just purely a security issue. It's more related to, I mean, the globalization and these political movements against globalization. It's more a political issue, and as one of the outcomes of this political issue or this social discomfort is this, I mean, these new emerging threats of trying to disrupt industries. And then there's an additional threat that is particularly interesting, and is this Cold War between countries.
Yep.
I cannot elaborate that much on that for obvious reasons, but there are countries in this world that employ thousands and thousands of engineers trying to hack into the systems of other countries. So that also creates a threat for banking, because we are part of the essential industries in countries.
Yeah. And even the best efforts of GCHQ or whatever will not necessarily prevent those sort of attacks. Yeah.